Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about some most important interview questions for Power BI. Okay. Now these questions can be for someone who is very new to Power BI, also someone who has exposure to Power BI development, probably like 3 to 5 years of experience as well. So first question, what are the data source you have connected in Power BI? So after your introduction with interviewer and everything, when they drill down about your project, some of the questions which they have asked is to start with, they'll ask you about what are the data source you have connected. So probably you can mention databases if you are worked with SQL Server, MySQL, anything on cloud databases, or if you have also worked with Excel as your data source or CSV, please mention about that. Let's move to the next question. What is the size of the data you have worked? This is one of the most frequently asked question. So what is the size? So here the expectation is either you can say that I have worked with 1 million records, if you remember the size of your data, or if you want to take in terms of size, you can say I have worked with around 2 GB or 3 GB of data, or you can even say that I have worked with probably 36 tables. So please be very specific when you are telling the size of the data, right? So it can be, if you remember how many records, you can tell about that, or else if you remember what is the size in MB or GB, because you can see in your Power BI file size also, maybe just give an estimate about what is the size of the data you have worked. Okay, let's move to the next question. So before moving to the next question, please subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to keep adding more videos. We also provide training in data analytics from Vizonis Academy, and we train in advanced Excel, SQL, Tableau, and Power BI. In case if you are interested, please feel free to reach out to this number displayed on the screen. Okay, so let's go to the next question. How do you handle the large data in Power BI? So this is basically a little bit a lengthy question, right? So when you say how do you handle large data, which means when your data size is heavy, so it has lot of records, how can you handle such data sets in Power BI? Option 1 is your data connectivity. Either you can set up direct query, which is or it will only get the data when the report is run. It will not import and save inside your Power BI. So direct query means every time it will run the query in the data source and get you the results. So that is one way of handling the large data. Or the second way of handling the large data is you can normalize your data even if you are not using direct query. For example, if you are using import mode and the data set size is heavy, so what you can do, you can normalize the data, which means you can either follow some schema like star schema or snowflake schema to divide your dimensions and facts. You can follow some best practices in Power BI by removing auto date and time, which will reduce your data model size. And you can, instead of doing joins in Power BI, you can do your joins in data source level. For example, if you are using SQL, you can apply joins there, so that also will help. So like this, there are a lot of other best practices which you have followed in your project. You can probably talk about that. Okay, so let's go to the next question. So what is the difference between joins and relationships? So this is one of the another most frequently asked questions for people who are into data visualization. So joins, what will happen when you apply any type of join, whether it is inner join, left join, or any type of join, what happens is whether you use it or not, your join is going to be applied inside your data model. Results will be saved inside your data model. So if you have 10 columns from one table 1 and another 10 columns from table 2, when you apply join, it will become 20 columns. Okay, so whether you are using it or not, joins will get applied and saved in your data model. So every time you apply join, it will need its own time to process that join to calculate the result. And what is relationship? Relationship is not going to create any result set. Okay, so it like joins, it will not apply any results and store inside the data model. It will just a virtual diagram. So what it do is basically instead of applying a join, what it does is it will connect both the tables, but it will activate when you are creating any visual. So think about, you have created a bar chart, one column you are you are pulling in from table 1, another column you are pulling from table 2. When that visual is getting utilized, only at that time relationship will get utilized. So what is the benefit here? So the benefit is, whenever you have some data sets which has complex data, so on the fly, if you want to basically apply the result set, you can go for relationships. Whereas if you want to do some calculations, or you want to apply a join and save it upfront, and that particular sign you can use joins. But most of the time, in terms of performance, relationships will act better, it will perform better, because unnecessarily it will not run and store your result set in the data model. It will activate in runtime. So it is like a virtual ER diagram which you can see in Power BI. It will get utilized only based on the visuals which you have choose. That is the another point you can make a note of. Whenever you have created a relationships, out of 10 charts, if you are created 2 charts which is using data from multiple tables, only those charts will execute the relationship, other charts will not. Whereas in joins, it doesn't care about the charts, it all it does is it goes into your data and it will apply the joins and save the result whether you use it or not. Hope this is going to be helpful. This is one way of explaining is. If you have any another way or better way, please do comment in this particular video section. Okay, let's move to the next section. Why do we need Power Query and M functions? So now the question here is, why we need Power Query when we are using Power BI to create reports? Why do we need this Power Query as well as M functions? Now let's go back. Okay, so now Power Query is like a ETL functionality. It is a ETL feature, which means for your data preparation, for if you want to clean your data, right, for the reporting layer, if you want to remove unnecessary columns, you want to change the data type, or you want to create some more calculated columns, any transformations which you want to do before you create reports, that's the reason we need Power Query. Power Query is like a ETL kind of a feature, specially built within Power BI. Okay, if you talk about other data visualizations like Tableau, there is no built-in functionality like Power Query. You have to do separately outside and get the transformation, but that is the benefit in Power BI. You can clean and transform your data using Power Query. Okay, now any transformation which you are doing inside your Power Query, it is basically a M function. So the question is here little tricky. So behind the scenes, using advanced editor, you can see what are the functions you have used, what are the other M functions which you have used as part of your Power Query. Okay, now with the standard Power Query user interface, you can do all transformations which is available in the ribbon, but along with that, there are plenty of other functions. Like how we have functions in Excel, there are plenty of functions which you can create by add a custom column in M functions. Okay, for example, if you want to find out whether this date was present in next quarter, so there is one built-in M function available for that. So any point of time you want to do some complex analysis, you can utilize M function. Okay, let's move to the next question. Can we add reference line in line chart or bar chart? Okay, now we are moving to the visual section, reporting layer. Okay, so the question here is, can we add a reference line, which means in line chart you have already created line, for example sales and profit. Can you also display average of profit as a reference line? Yes, it is possible. Under formatting, where you customize the chart, you can go ahead and add as many reference line as you need. Okay, so let's go for the next one. Is it possible to dynamically change fields used in visuals? So here, this is also one of the most frequently asked question. Dynamically change field means, say you have created a chart, for example, month wise, what is the total sales? Now you want to dynamically remove sales and you can add automatically profit. Yes, it is possible to dynamically change the fields. How it is possible? Either you can write a DAX for this, or the second option is you can also use parameters to automatically change the fields. Okay. Do we have report parameters? How different is it from Power Query parameters? Now, in Power BI, please note that within Power Query, which is when you are connecting to data source, there also we have parameters that is called as Power Query parameters, which runs at the data source level. And what do we have? We have another, which is a report parameter, which means at the visual level, you can create some numerical parameters, some date parameters. So that is completely different. So answer is yes, we have both report as well as Power Query parameters. Okay. What is DAX and when not to use DAX? So DAX, the full form is data analysis expression. Okay. So when we should not use DAX? So now the interviewer probably is trying to check whether do you know the really the use case of DAX. Now one example we can take is, for example, let's say we want to extract first four letters from, there is a field called order ID. So generally you would use a left function, which is a text function, right? So now this text left function, you can either write it in SQL, you can even do this in Power Query, you can also do it in DAX. Now the reason here we are bringing this question is we don't want to really not required to use this left function in DAX. Why? Because any function which you are creating in DAX, this is getting executed at the reporting layer. Okay, which is you are taking lot of additional resources, performance is going to cause an impact. If you are writing any functions which is a row level calculation, so if you have 1,000 records, you are writing a function which is calculating at individual row level, generally we will try to do that in Power Query, or if you have SQL, try to do it in SQL. Any calculations which is applied at an individual record level, we generally don't apply it in DAX. But where do we apply? So DAX is generally applied on aggregated value. For an example, you want to calculate what would be the total sales, what is the average sales, or you want to calculate what is the average sales for a specific value or a specific filter you want to pass. So what we are doing here is we already have a data, we want to get some aggregated value. In that scenario, we are going to use DAX. So now DAX is again a lengthy topic. We have some time intelligence functions, all those things. All this happens, it rolls up your data at some dimension level. That's when we will use DAX. That's the best practice. Okay. Let's go for the next question. Share me the details of at least 3 DAX functions you have used. That is also another common question which will be asked in Power BI. Tell me any function name which you have used in DAX. For an example, you can start, if you are familiar, if you have already done it, you must know about it. There is a function called calculate. Calculate is one of the most powerful function. Most of the any issues which you have, any formula or any calculation which you will do, this formula is very useful. So calculate is like one solution for all the problems, right? So you can take calculate as one function as an example, and you can explain when are you going to use that. So second, you can use any time intelligence function, for example, same period last year, or total YTD, total QTD. That is one thing. Third, if you want to use any functions in terms of logical functions, you can talk about if else, or you can talk about switch function. So that is also one thing, like that, whichever functions which you have extensively used, maybe talk about that so that it will become easy for the opposite person to understand. Okay, let's go for the next one. Now we are moving a little bit on the deployment side. What license is required to publish the reports in Power BI workspace? So once you complete the report development, do we need any license to deploy the reports in Power BI workspace? So generally, if you have already worked in deployment, when you publish a report, you have a my personal workspace. So you have a personal workspace which you can deploy, but answer is not correct, because when you publish anything in personal workspace, you cannot share it with other users, right? So you have to publish these reports in a shared workspace. So in Power BI, we have a Power BI Pro license. If you have Power BI Pro license, you can deploy this dashboard in a shared workspace. Or else we have Power BI Premium license, where we have license called P1, P2, P3, or premium per user. If you have that license, what happens is, if you publish anything there, other people who have access to that workspace can actually see the report. So the answer is, generally you will have Power BI Pro license if you are a developer, or if you don't have Pro license, if you have any license which is under premium capacity, you can deploy this dashboards to there. And if at a high level, even if you don't have anything, you can still publish it to your personal workspace. So that would be the answer. Okay, let's go to the next one. How to set up incremental refresh. Okay, so this is little technical, so it will be little difficult, so you have to be very clearly give a insight about how do you use this feature. Okay, the first thing is why we need to use incremental refresh. You have to talk about that. For an example, you have large amount of data. Let's say your data set size is around 10 GB or 12 GB. So instead of doing full refresh means every time you delete all the records and load again, so that is a time taking. Instead, what you do, incremental means already you have loaded 5 GB of data, the balance data you want, only that you want to load it. That is what incremental. Now Power BI does not support incremental for all data sources. There are specific data sources like SQL Server, Snowflake. Only for that scenarios it will be supported. When you set up incremental refresh, one of the common requirement is you need to set up create parameters. Which parameters? It is a Power Query parameters. So you have to create a parameters. Generally it will be parameters data type will be either numerical or it will be timestamp. Only those two are supported at this point of time. And once you have that, you need to use those parameters in your Power Query step, wherein you will be basically using an operator between, greater than, equal to. Once you do that, you're in your data model in reporting layer, you can click on the three dots and set up an incremental refresh. Okay, why do we need data gateway? Okay, now answer is simple. If your data source is on premises, example, you are connecting to some Excel file which is available only in some dedicated restricted network, that scenario we need data gateway. Or you are connecting to SQL database is not publicly hosted over a cloud or over in internet. It requires a dedicated corporate network within your office network IP address only, that data source is accessible. In that scenario we would require data gateway. The short answer for this is any on-premises data sources requires data gateway. Okay, now let's go to the next question. How to set up user security for multiple fields in data model. So user security, row level security, this is one of the common question will be asked in Power BI. So why do we use this? To restrict the data. For example, John logs in and he want to see the data only for his business unit. And Anil, when he logs in, he want to see the data only for his business unit. So how do we set this? When you have your data model in the reporting layer, you have something called manage roles. You can go and configure the user security. So there is a user principal name function, right? You can use that and configure user security. So it will basically apply this user security, means it is a row level security. It's not a column security. Okay, so it applies at a row level. What is large and small semantic model in Power BI? This is also one of the most important questions, especially for people who says we have 3 years, 4 years of experience. You can expect this question. Okay, so what is large and small semantic model? Any data model, or what is data model? It is a collection of tables. If the number of records, the size of the data is small, if it is not very huge, it is not going to increase in nearly real time, then we will be considering that as a small semantic, which means by default all the data sources which you are publishing is a small semantic model. When you realize that your data is growing, so Power BI has a limitation that by default it can have a maximum 10 GB of size. Okay, so 10 GB is the hard code limit. If your data is more than 10 GB, then you have to change your model, semantic model format. How do you change it? You can apply this at a data source level. You can go to your data source settings and change from small to large semantic model size. So what happens is, in large semantic model, Power BI knows that it is expectation is you are bringing in more amount of data, and what it does basically is it will distribute your data and partition your data and store it so that it will support your huge amount of records. You can also change your entire workspace to be large semantic model storage format. That is also possible, and when you set it at workspace level, it gets applied to all data sources. Okay, so you can do apply this at data source level as well as workspace level. So this is a very important question. Okay, so I think we have covered around total approximately around 15 questions which we feel, this is important in Power BI. If you like this content, please do subscribe and like this video. As I said earlier, we are also providing training in data analytics. If you are interested, please comment down or you can reach out to this particular number. Okay, thank you everyone, have a nice day.